We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Labor has refused to be honest with Australians about its plan for new toxic taxes, a lie that the government hid from Australians at the last election. Why doesn't the Prime Minister have the courage to take his toxic taxes to the next election?
Just going to rule on that. I'm ruling that part of the question out regarding the use of the word lie, as all speakers before me have done so. The Prime Minister has the call. The Manager on a point of order.
Yes, thanks, Speaker. Just on that ruling, on 14 May 2026, you said, and I quote, "I think it's in the best interest for both sides not to be referring to any individuals, people or parties using that term." And later on 25 May 2026, you allowed a question to be asked of the Prime Minister, which A, contained the word lie and B, did this with a direct reference to the government. So I just ask, Speaker, given that that has been allowed previously, why can't we use it again?
I've made it clear to the House, subsequent to that, which the member understands. Resume your seat. And I'm going to deal with this now. I've been reflecting on the language used over the last few weeks, and more recently, the vulgar language has been used during 90-second statements, and I'm going to make my position clear today on this matter. I don't allow any ambiguity around permitting accusations of lying in whatever carefully crafted form to continue. It does not support the dignity of this House and all of us as members. An accusation that a member has lied or deliberately misled is an imputation or an improper motive. This language is unparliamentary and has been ruled by successive speakers, including when directed at governments or political parties. And I have observed when such accusations have been made in recent sittings, language has led to disruptive and disorderly behaviour in the chamber. I deem it undesirable from that perspective as well. I want to also address the comments that have been made both in this place and outside of it about occasions when the approach about language has not been followed in a consistent way over the years. I've looked back at previous speakers' rulings on this matter and the number of times each speaker has asked a member to withdraw these exact type of words. Speaker Hawker 10 times, Speaker Jenkins 40 times, Speaker Slipper 6 times, Speaker Burke 9 times, Speaker Bishop 21, Speaker Smith 13 and former Speaker Wallace twice. So I want to make it very clear, as I've been doing, I intend to treat any accusations of lying as out of order, and I will continue to ask such accusations to be withdrawn and will not allow as part of questions. If this behaviour persists, members may find that they lose the call or lose their opportunity to ask a question. I'm following all speakers before me for the last 40 years in such a way. The Prime Minister has the call. Order. The Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker.
Order.
Well, we're changing.
The member for Herbert will leave the chamber under 94A. The Prime Minister has not even begun words. We are lifting the standards today. The Leader of the Opposition and the Minister for Social Services, I heard both of those. We are just going to improve standards today. This parliament has not been its best this week. Behaviour and language. I've made it clear how I expect the parliament to operate. I'm asking all members to join and make sure that we show respect to one another and behaviour is improved. The Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. In the legislation that the Treasurer introduced this morning, it proposes to change the tax system to give young people a fair crack at a first home, as well as to build more homes. That is what the legislation does. It also changes the way that capital gains tax is treated so that there's more fair treatment of income earned from working, which is how most Australians get their income and pay their bills and buy their food, and income earned from assets, which is something that is different from earning from working, and there's nothing wrong with that. But why is it? Why is it that for so long so many have commentated that there's actually a disadvantage in income earned from working compared with income earned from assets? Now, that is, in addition to that, there are two further changes. One is the $1,000 automatic tax deduction, something that will assist particularly low and middle-income earners. And the other change, of course, is our latest income tax reduction. We have introduced reduction after reduction after reduction after reduction after reduction. 5 lots of income tax reduction.
The members on my left. The Minister for Infrastructure, the Leader of the Opposition, is going to take his point of order.
Relevance, Mr Speaker. The question was very clear in asking why the Prime Minister hasn't got the guts to take his toxic taxes to an election.
Order. Order. Adding extra words as part of the point of order is disorderly. Just remind all members when they're taking points of order just to state that it's on relevance without extra commentary. The member for Dobell. Prime Minister will continue.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition was triggered when I was talking about reducing income taxes. Immediately you speak about reducing taxes and they get upset. They've never been more angry than when we reduce income taxes for working Australians, which is what the legislation that we've introduced today will do. And we're giving every member, some of whom this might be the last chance they have to vote on income tax reductions, Mr Speaker. Because over and over again, those opposite, they voted against the changes to stage 3 tax cuts. They voted against the income tax cuts when we introduced them in the last budget. They went to an election saying they would increase taxation for 14 million Australians and managed to, at the same time, have bigger deficits. Quite an achievement from the former Shadow Treasurer. So how did they respond to that? They made him the leader.
The Leader of the House.
Speaker, there was an interjection made by the Leader of the Opposition which was way beyond unparliamentary at the start of that answer. To assist, look, order. I can't hear, because of the issues I've raised to this House, I can't hear every interjection. But if the Leader of the Opposition has made an unparliamentary remark to assist the House, I'll just get him to withdraw it.
To assist the House, I withdraw.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition. Just remind everyone the interjections can be reduced. I can hear more of the debate, which is the best interest of the House. We'll hear from the honourable member for Moreton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. How will the reforms in the Albanese Labor government's budget help more Australians get ahead? How does this compare to other approaches?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and to the member for Moreton for her question, and also for the opportunity to share the responsibility for representing the great people of the southern suburbs of Brisbane on her side of Compton Road and my side of Compton Road. I appreciate the question. Mr Speaker, the legislation we introduced today was part of the most ambitious tax reforms that we've seen in this place for a quarter of a century. And that legislation is about 3 things. It's about cutting taxes for workers, It's about making it easier to buy a first home, and it's about better aligning the tax treatment of labour and assets, Mr Speaker. Now, anybody who votes against this legislation is voting for higher taxes on workers and for a broken status quo in the housing market. They have done this before and they look like making the same mistake again. They don't understand, Mr Speaker, that aspiration and opportunity are not something that you learn about from focus groups, and they can't be something that our kids read about in history books either, Mr Speaker. If we accept that generations of Australians are at risk of being disregarded and disconnected from our economy and our society, then we have a responsibility to act on that. When the country wants things to change, they are clinging to a busted status quo which locks too many Australians out of housing and out of our economy more broadly, Mr Speaker. Now, it would be easier, but it would be wrong to leave things exactly as they are. Governing is about seeing problems in our economy and our society and taking decisive and difficult steps to address those challenges, as we are doing on this side of the House, Mr Speaker. Not leaving them for somebody else to fix while generation after generation would pay a heftier price for that cowardice, Mr Speaker. Economic reform is always accompanied by dishonest scare campaigns, but those dishonest scare campaigns will not deter us, Mr Speaker. This legislation is all about cutting taxes for workers, and they don't want us to do that. It's about making it easier to buy a first home, and those opposite do not want to see that happen. It's about better aligning the tax treatment of labour and assets, Mr Speaker. Now, I hear them chirping away about going to an early election, Mr Speaker. I don't think they want an election right now, Mr Speaker. And we've heard a bit of chat. We've heard a bit of chat in recent days about the formation of a new minor party in our politics, Mr Speaker, in this country. The most efficient way to create a minor party in Australia is to put the member for Hume in charge of a major one, Mr Speaker, and that's why they are so stroppy this week. The fair go must be a defining characteristic of our future, not just the defining characteristic of our past, and that's what our legislation is all about.
Before I call the member, just resume your seat for a moment, Leader of the Opposition. Before I call the Leader of the Opposition, I understand the member Bowman, McPherson, Gray and Groom have signs that they are prepared to hold up. LIES. They're not permitted to do that under the standing orders, so I'm going to ask you not to do that. There are props not allowed in this House. I will not have signs held up like that for the dignity of this House. I'm giving you fair warning that we are not having the Parliament of Australia denigrated into that. Order. Well, you're on thin ice too, Member for Kennedy, wearing that. Trust me. Resume your seat. Order. When the House comes to order, the Leader of the Opposition has the call.
My question is to the Prime Minister. The Labor Premier for Western Australia, Roger Cook. The Labor Premier for New South Wales, Chris Minns. The Labor members for Parramatta and Bennelong. And the Labor Economic Committee all are opposed to Labor's toxic taxes. What will it take for the Prime Minister to axe these toxic taxes?
Order. The member for Cooper will leave the chamber under 94A. Order. When the House comes to order, the Leader of the Opposition has asked his question. Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, where do you begin? Seriously.
Order.
That question was based upon complete fantasy.
Order.
I stood up with Roger Cook last week at a 29-storey building that we are building in Perth. New housing, new social housing, new affordable housing for essential workers, new private rentals and new home ownership.
Here.
Waiting as part of our $47 billion Homes for Australia plan. The Premier of WA, just like the Premier of New South Wales,
Order.
just like all of our members here, who went through all of our positions, including, of course, our Cabinet Secretary,
Order.
all
the
our
Leader of the
caucus.
Opposition has asked his question.
You know what the people on this side have to say in
Order.
the Labor caucus? What they say to me is how proud they are that we are fighting for values that matter, that we are not prepared to leave the next generation behind, and to say it would be easier to just stay
Order.
still and leave it for someone else to fix the problem. Because every single
Order.
one
The
of
member for
my
Parkes
members,
is warned.
and if those opposite got out more and spoke to people, they would know that people in their
Order.
electorates are saying the housing system is broken in this country, that we need to fix it, just like the Shadow Treasurer has said, just like the member for Canning has said, just like the former Treasurer Joe Hockey said up in that corner before he left the building.
Order.
Well, we believe in this side that when you have the power to effect real change, you should do it. That you have a responsibility to deliver real change. And that is what we are doing through this. Taking every dollar of tax from these measures and delivering income tax cuts over the forward estimates. Making sure that we set Australia up for the future. So that future generations don't say, is it true, Dad or Mum, that there was a time where people were actually able to buy their own house, not just inherit it? That is what we are fighting for. We are fighting for things that really matter, because that's what the Labor Party does.
The member for Parkes is now going to leave the chamber on 94A. If you're on a warning, member for Parkes, it's best not for me to hear your interjection or make any interjection. Okay. Now the House is settled. We'll hear from the honourable member for Swan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing. What is the Albanese Labor government doing through our Homes for Australia plan to tackle the Australia housing crisis? And is the Minister aware of any alternative approaches?
Call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Thank you so much, Speaker, and I thank the wonderful member for Swan for her question. Speaker, we've got a housing crisis in our country that's been building for decades, and the member for Swan is proud, as I am, to be a part of a government that, with genuine and great conviction, is tackling this problem from every single angle. Speaker, our Homes for Australia plan is a long-term plan to rebuild Australia's housing system so it actually works for the Australian people. More homes, more first home buyers, a better deal for renters and helping more Australians in crisis. This morning, the Treasurer introduced legislation to deliver the next step. Tax reforms that, for the first time in 25 years, will level the playing field for first home buyers and provide a tax cut for every single working person in our country. Speaker, we are having a big parliamentary debate at the moment about aspiration. So let me be really clear about where Labor stands. There is no greater aspiration in this country than to own your own home. Speaker, for most families around this nation, this is the most important financial decision that they will ever make in their lives. Our tax changes are about helping Australians build financial security for themselves and their families. Now, Speaker, there are lots of
Order. Yeah. Just, if we can just take a breath and everyone just listen and not interject for the remainder of this answer, I think it'll be beneficial for the House and for everyone listening. The call to the Minister.
Speaker, there are lots of surveys that tell us that we are at the point where most young people in our country do not think they will ever own a house in Australia. Problems like this can become so big and difficult that people start to give up altogether. Not because they lack ambition, Speaker, but because they believe the system will not reward their effort. After all, what is the incentive to work hard when the thing that matters most to you and your family is out of reach? And once a country starts losing belief in aspiration, the consequences reach far beyond housing. Helping more Australians into a home of their own is central to our plan for housing, and it is central to our vision for Australia. Now, those opposite don't just want to vote against the changes that we are making, they want to roll them back. They are promising to reimpose a broken system on this country. And if we take that approach, we're going to end up living in a country where whether you own a home depends on the wealth you inherited rather than the work that you did for yourself. And that is not Australia. Our government rejects that future. We believe aspiration belongs to every single person in this country, and that's what the legislation that the Treasurer introduced this morning is all about. Thank you, Speaker.
The call to the honourable member for Fowler.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, will the ISIS-affiliated women who landed in Sydney yesterday be living in Fairfield, Liverpool or Bankstown? And has the government or any representative of the government been in contact with local community leaders regarding this issue?
Call to the Leader of the House, the Minister for Home Affairs.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. As I've said to the member for Fowler before in this House, the government isn't settling anyone. The government is not involved in settling people at all. We've had citizens return, as we've had citizens have self-managed returns before we came to office, including 45 men who had gone there to fight. But in terms of the consultation with the community, I can give examples of consultation that has been very powerful, that has happened in the lead-up to when it was first reported that these individuals might seek to return. I'd include Manda House in Australia, the Assyrian National Council, the Assyrian Australian Association, the Chaldean Catholic Church, the Assyrian Church of the East. Although I'd also add to that probably no meeting more powerful than when a delegation came here from Wagga, from the Yazidi community, which involved one woman who, from memory, she would have been 19, had herself effectively been a slave, hadn't seen her mum since she was 8. There are reasons why the government has the view that we have of what these individuals did.
Call to the order. We'll give the call to the member for Patterson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Attorney-General. Earlier today, the Commonwealth commenced legal action in the Federal Court of Australia against 3M and 3M Company. What is the significance of the legal action, Attorney-General?
Give the call to the Attorney-General.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for her question. I also acknowledge her decade of strong advocacy in these matters and how important this is for her community and for others in this place. This morning, the Commonwealth commenced legal action in the Federal Court of Australia against 3M Australia and 3M Company for allegedly withholding information and making false statements about the long-term environmental impacts of the use of 3M firefighting foam containing PFAS. The Commonwealth is seeking more than $2 billion in damages to recover significant past and future expenses incurred in investigating and managing contamination resulting from the historical storage and use of this foam. Mr Speaker, this is the largest legal claim ever brought by the Commonwealth. For the benefit of the House, PFAS are chemicals that have been contained in legacy firefighting foams for many years, including on Defence sites. Defence no longer uses legacy firefighting foams that caused PFAS contamination. The government's position is that 3M withheld a range of information and misrepresented the adverse environmental effects of this substance, including stating that the foam was biodegradable, non-toxic and could be disposed of safely. This misconduct has come at significant cost to the Australian taxpayer, including over $1 billion to date to investigate, remediate and mitigate PFAS contamination at Defence estate sites. I know, as does my excellent colleague, the Assistant Minister for Defence, that Australians have dealt with the consequences of PFAS contamination for many years. Communities impacted by PFAS contamination deserve transparency, accountability and ongoing support. Protecting Australians, including our defence personnel, our veterans, local communities and First Nations peoples, is this government's #1 priority. Australians rightly expect their government to stand up for them and hold companies accountable when communities and the environment are impacted, and that is why we are bringing this action. The Commonwealth is a model litigant, and we will take steps to genuinely engage with 3M to resolve this claim as efficiently as possible. But let me be clear, we are not afraid to take on 3M in the interests of Australians. And as I said this morning, we'll say again, this legal action against 3M is significant. It is the action of a government that is committed to fighting for Australians and their long-term interests.
Call to the member for Goldstein. Order. Order. Members on my right. The member hasn't even begun his question. Okay. Member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. It's now been 2 weeks since the budget, so the Prime Minister should be across the detail of his toxic taxes. Can the Prime Minister confirm whether capital gains for small business owners will be averaged over 5 years, as in the pre-1999 system, to prevent some of the most hard-working Australians from being pushed into the top bracket?
Order. Give a call to the Treasurer. Order. Prime Minister has the call. Order. Prime Minister has the call.
I wanted the quote from the Ralph Review of 1999 that was commissioned by the then coalition government. And they said this, which is why it was changed. Australia's averaging provisions are used by a section of the asset-holding community to reduce capital gains tax to zero or near to zero, while others who are not in a position to engineer the same benefit carry the burden of taxation at close to their full marginal rate. This results in considerable inequity.
And the member for Forest.
John Howard got rid of it. It's not the only way in which the current coalition have moved even further right than John Howard, because he didn't give one nation preferences either.
Call order. Order. When the House comes to order. Okay, when the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Leichhardt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories. How is the Albanese Labor government's budget making it easier for Australians to live and thrive in the regions? How does this compare with alternative approaches?
The call to the Minister for Emergency Management, the Minister for Regional Development, the Minister for Local Government and the Minister for Territories.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Leichhardt. Not only is he a great advocate for regional Australia, but he's a passionate Queenslander. Chin up, big fella, there's still 2 more games to go. Also good to see the member for Kennedy join the bandwagon.
The Minister will return to the question.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And it's great to be able to rise again today to speak about the Albanese Labor government's support for regional Australia. the best part of the country. This is a budget that has placed housing front and centre. Housing supply, affordability and enabling infrastructure in our regions are key to ensuring kids in the bush get to get their own home and raise a family in the town that they love. We have a $47 billion Homes for Australia plan to build more homes, to help first home buyers and to support renters. And regional Australians are a priority across our major housing initiatives. Programs such as our 5% deposit scheme has already helped 83,000 people buy their own home in our regions. And now our expanded 5% deposit scheme and the Help to Buy scheme are helping more regional Australians to own their own home. Through the Housing Australia Future Fund, we're supporting the development of more than 2,900 social and affordable homes in regional and remote areas, with more to come in round 3. Initiatives like $12.4 million for the Cooma Housing Project in my own electorate. It'll turn 12.6 hectares of unused land into new community, with 140 new residential lots, a mix of social, affordable and private housing options tailored to the local community. The $2 billion social housing accelerator payment is on track to deliver almost 1,400 social homes in regional Australia. And, Mr Speaker, we know that in order to build new homes, we need the enabling infrastructure to get them done, the power, the roads and the drainage. Last term we created the Housing Support Program with $1.5 billion, and we've heard from local government the need for more enabling infrastructure, which is why in this budget we've committed another $2 billion with $500 million directed to regional Australia. The government has already invested over $6.3 billion in housing enabling infrastructure. And I hear them complaining, but that is 50 times more than those opposite did when they were in government. Our $47 billion investment in housing is 10 times what the coalition invested when they were in last money. And I guess we ask, where did their regional infrastructure funding go? Well, it went to the North Sydney Regional Pool, $11 a pop, and there's a gelato bar if you want to go and help yourself next time you're in Sydney visiting regional communities. We want to make it easier for first-home buyers to get in their home. We're putting our money where our mouth is, unlike those opposite who for 9 years gave the regions nothing.
Has concluded. Call to the member for Page.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, it's now been 2 weeks since the budget, so the Prime Minister should be across the details of his toxic taxes. Can the Prime Minister confirm that, unlike the pre-1999 system, capital gains will now be taxed at a minimum 30%, which would hit those on the lowest incomes the hardest?
You should be
Order. The order. Members on my left, the question's been asked. The Prime Minister has the call. The Leader of the Opposition. The Leader of the Opposition and the Leader of the Opposition and the Treasurer. The Prime Minister hasn't begun answering, so just cool it. We'll hear from the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. What these measures do when it comes to capital gains tax, the negative gearing changes, the income tax reductions, the automatic tax deduction that we introduced today do quite the opposite of what the member for Page has suggested, is to enhance opportunity and aspiration rather than entrench privilege. That is what they do, because we want every Australian
the Leader of the Nationals, just please cease interjecting. Prime Minister.
We want every Australian to have the opportunity to own their own home, not just some, because we understand that Australians want not just a better life for themselves, but importantly, they want a better life for their children and their grandchildren. And that is why the Howard government got rid of the averaging provisions, because they said it was used by a section of the asset holding community to reduce capital gains taxation to zero or near to zero. while others who are not in a position to engineer the same benefit carry the burden of taxation at close to their full marginal rate. And that is the whole point, Mr Speaker. The whole point, which is that people can still invest in housing and use negative gearing and use capital gains tax discount, the existing one, but in order to do so, they'll have to invest in a new home. And what that will do, importantly—
Order. The question was regarding which the lowest incomes will be hit hardest, and the Prime Minister is being directly relevant to that part of the question. But I'll hear from the member Page.
Thanks, Speaker. Speaker, the question related to capital gains tax, not negative gearing. I think the Prime Minister's confused.
Well, to be fair to the member Page, the question began with, it's been 2 weeks since the budget, and the Prime Minister might be across the details. So you've made an allegation. The Prime Minister is answering that part of the question, and then he's talking about order. So I'll make sure he's being directly relevant, and so far he is, but he won't be able to stray too much further because he wasn't asked about anything else. But he is being directly relevant.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I'm talking about why in 1999 the Howard government got rid of and changed the capital gains tax measures because they were inequitable. And the question went to the issue of low-income earners and fairness. And the truth is that what we are doing is fairer. And indeed, when it comes to
the Leader of the Nationals is going to leave the chamber under 94A. We're not having— I've already counselled him. The Leader of the Nationals in the House of Representatives.
Mr Speaker, they've lost the Leader of the Nationals in the House of Representatives, and now they're fighting over who'll take that spot over there.
Order.
This is one of the parties of government in Australia the coalition have been reduced to, Mr Speaker. This is what they have been reduced to,
Order.
Mr Speaker. And we have introduced legislation this morning that will make our tax system fairer,
Order.
that will enhance the opportunity for people to own their own homes.
Give the call to the honourable member for Solomon.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How are the Albanese Labor government's investments in bulk billing and urgent care making it easier for Australians to see a doctor after a decade of cuts and neglect?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the Minister of the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker. Through him, can I thank the staff also of the National Critical Care and Trauma Response Centre, which is stationed in Darwin. They are staffing the Bullsbrook Quarantine Facility down in Perth, and I announced only a few hours ago that the mandatory quarantine period for the 6 returned passengers from MV Hondius impacted by the hantavirus outbreak would be extended by another 3 weeks, which will be staffed by the NCC TRC. Also, they're doing terrific work in communities helping with the diphtheria outbreak. But, Mr Speaker, more broadly, our government has been busy building a better health system for the Northern Territory, delivering on so many of the things that the member for Solomon and the member for Lingiari had been arguing for years. Finally, Darwin now has its own medical school, having taken its first students this year. There's been a 30% increase in hospital funding from the Commonwealth after years of underfunding from previous governments. The NT hospitals will receive over the course of our funding agreement $1 billion more than they would have received if we'd rolled over the Morrison and Turnbull arrangements, Mr Speaker. And as the member well knows, this week we opened the 136th that's hard to say, 136th urgent care clinic in the northern suburbs of Darwin, just around the corner from the endometriosis clinic in Coconut Grove. The Palmerston Urgent Care Clinic has already seen 37,000 patients, and now the people of Darwin, particularly in the northern suburbs, will get the benefit of high-quality urgent care 7 days a week, fully bulk billed, Mr Speaker. But without a doubt, the most remarkable transformation and change we're seeing in Solomon is in bulk billing, the beating heart of Medicare, the guarantee started by Labor that Australians can be confident that they can go to the doctor whenever they need to rather than when they can afford to, Mr Speaker. And I'm pleased to say Solomon has seen the biggest increase in bulk billing of any electorate since our record investment last year, Mr Speaker. The number of 100% bulk billing general practices in Solomon has tripled just since the 1st of November, Mr Speaker. The bulk billing rate in Solomon is now 90%, where we want the country to be by 2030, Mr Speaker. It is 23% higher than it was in 2023, when we made our first investments. And the biggest increases have been for those who don't have the benefit of a concession card. In just 5 months, those people in Darwin have seen an increase of more than 20% in their bulk billing rate, Mr Speaker. Now, we remember the Leader of the Opposition called our investments, as the member for Solomon said, in urgent care, in bulk billing, wasteful spending. But the people of Solomon know that a stronger Medicare is making a real difference to their lives.
Call to the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I move that so much of the standing and sessional orders be suspended as would prevent the Leader of the Opposition
members
from
on
moving.
My right. The members on my right, the Leader of the House is seeking the call.
You're moving a suspension?
Yeah. Suspension. Just allow the Leader of the Opposition to move a suspension and begin again.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I move that so much of the standing and sessional orders be suspended as would prevent the Leader of the Opposition from moving the following motion immediately. That this House condemns the Albanese Labor government for 1. Arrogantly misleading Australians about the government's plans for toxic taxes, 2. Not having the courage to take their toxic taxes to the Australian people at an election, 3. Taxing Australians more than any other Australian government in history, 4. Betraying the hardest-working Australians who are willing to take risks and who have made the biggest sacrifices, and 5, hurting Australians without any understanding of who will be punished and to what extent Australians will be worse off.
The member for Canning. No, just resume. It doesn't work that. It doesn't work that way. Order. You second it when the person speaks. Hang on. We'll deal. Look. It's okay. We're going to get through it. Order. Yeah. But it doesn't work that way. But we'll get through it. We'll find a way. Don't worry. The Leader of the House.
Mr Speaker, as the Leader of the Opposition would know, because he's been here for a long time, when you move a resolution, you say you move it and you give the entirety of your speech. At whatever time you have finished your speech, you sit down. That can be right at the start, it can be end at the time limit, but when you sit down, that's the end of your speech. At that point, you as Speaker would ordinarily ask, is the motion seconded?
Yeah.
The seconder gets up, and at that point the seconder gives their speech, which will always begin with "I second the motion," and then when they finish their speech, they sit down. I'd suggest, Mr Speaker, we're in a situation now where the Leader of the Opposition, understanding orders, has actually finished his speech, which was relatively short,
You gagged yourself.
And his alternative has seconded the motion and finished his speech too. It's an unusual approach to the debate, Mr Speaker, but for the Leader of the Opposition to now seek the call would be out of order.
Yeah, it is always... Order. Members on my right. Order. We'll just deal with this. It has always been the convention and the way the standing orders works that someone, when they move a suspension, gives their speech. They don't sit down. The seconder then stands and gives their speech. So this has not happened before in this way. I think the Leader of the Opposition was just intending to get the debate going by... No, I understand where he's coming from, So under the standing orders now, the call does go to the other side once it's been moved and seconded. The Leader of the House. But provisions with the House to deal with this after question time under the standing orders, and I will invite the Leader of the House.
Under Standing Order 47E, I'd require that this debate be continued after the MPI.
Yeah. And that is the way the standing orders are written. So 47E is if a motion for suspension of... I'll just brief the House so everyone knows. If a motion for the suspension of orders is moved during question time, which the Leader of the Opposition has done, after the terms of the motion have been proposed by the mover, a minister may require that further proceedings in relation to the motion take place at a later hour as set down by the minister. And that has now occurred. We'll move to the next question, and I'll give the call to the honourable member for Hasluck.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister. How is the Albanese government's record investment in defence delivering key capabilities for the Australian Defence Force, and how does this compare to alternative approaches?
Give the call to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence.
Well, can I thank the member for her question and acknowledge her service in the Australian Army. Last month, the National Defence Strategy, which was part of the budget, provided for an increase in defence spending of $53 billion over the decade, $14 billion over the forward estimates. We are spending more on defence in the medium term, more over the forward estimates, and more right now. Indeed, in this financial year, 25-26, we have increased defence spending by $4.3 billion in this year alone, and that represents the biggest acceleration of defence spending in a single year in our country's history. What that means is that right now we are increasing the capability of our P-8 aircraft, our most important anti-submarine warfare capability. We're investing in counter-unmanned aerial systems for the Australian Army, which in turn forms part of a broader $12 to $15 billion allocation for drone and counter-drone technology over the coming decade. We're increasing the capability of our airfields, which was identified as a priority by the Defence Strategic Review, and we are immediately uplifting the capability of the Defence Intelligence Organisation and the Australian Geospatial Intelligence Organisation. And all of this is a reflection of the strategic urgency of the moment, because this is historic levels of real money being spent on real capability as we speak. Now, all we're hearing in response from the coalition are tired, old, recycled lines. Thought bubbles about new capabilities which go absolutely nowhere. They're getting themselves lost in accounting rabbit holes. And ultimately, what their defence policy amounts to is the assertion of a single number, but just as in the election campaign, when they are asked to identify what they're spending money on, they are utterly unable to nominate a single defence capability. It is completely hopeless because, Mr Speaker, the sad truth is that given the difficulty of the moment that our nation faces, when it comes to defence policy, the Liberals are not even on the park. And as such, they are most definitely selling Australians short. Well, the Albanese government is going to continue to build our nation's defences. We are going to continue to be focused on defence policy detail because it actually matters. And in the process, we are greatly increasing the capability of our defence force to keep Australians safe.
Give a call to the honourable member for New England.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Treasurer, it seems impossible to divine what the cost is of the capacity investment schemes and the forwards. These capacity investment schemes underwrite the swindle factories, and I think the Australian people have a right to know what they are. So can we get within $5 billion? Is it less than $1 billion? Is it between $1 and $5 billion? Is it between $5 and $10 billion? Is it more than $10 billion? Is it part of the $18.2 billion? Give it, just spitball us a number. Give us some idea how much this is going to cost us.
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
I thank the honourable member for his question. The capacity investment scheme is very important for creating jobs and investment across Australia. The auction just last week will unlock $17 billion in private investment and create around 19,000 construction jobs, Mr. Speaker, so it's very important. In relation to the cost in the budget, the costings, Mr. Speaker, are commercial in confidence for reasons that the House would understand. It is an auction and it is appropriate that the taxpayers' interest be respected and defended. By keeping it commercial in confidence, the member for New England would understand this. When he was in office, he once said, "I don't believe there's a reason that everyone in the public needs to know commercial in confidence agreements in relation to government policy," Mr. Speaker.
Order. Give a call to the honourable member for Barton.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government supporting workers and helping Australians into safe and secure work?
Give a call to the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Thank you, Speaker. And I'd like to thank the member for Barton for her question and her ongoing commitment to supporting Aussie workers. Now, at the heart of this government's tax reforms in our budget is a rebalancing of the tax system to support working Australians, because they deserve our support. From July this year and next year, every taxpayer will receive a tax cut because of our government. To support working Australians, we're cutting taxes by introducing a new $250 tax cut through the introduction of the Working Australians tax offset. This means more money in the pockets of our nurses, our teachers, retail assistants, cleaners and other Australians who earn salaries and wages. Now, on top of this, our budget also delivers on our commitment to introduce a $1,000 instant tax deduction. This will make tax time more simple for millions of workers. The combination of these tax cuts means the average worker will benefit by up to $2,800 a year. Now, not only are we supporting Australian workers through tax cuts, but we're also taking action to improve and protect workers' wages. Our government has introduced Same Job, Same Pay, which is now delivering pay rises for thousands of Australian workers across this country. We've legislated to protect penalty and overtime rates, which make up an important part of many Australians' pay packets. We've backed our lowest paid workers at the Fair Work Commission each and every year we've been in government. Under our government, the minimum wage has increased by more than $9,000. And we've introduced significant reforms to reinvigorate enterprise bargaining, which is a key source of wages growth. This government has introduced new standards that ensure gig workers don't have to rely on tips to survive, and we've backed and funded pay increases for early educators and aged carers. Not only is this government supporting working people through tax cuts and higher wages, but we're also supporting more Australians get the opportunity for a job. Our government will help more people get a job with our biggest reform to employment services in 30 years. And we've delivered funding in this budget to start the reform process. It is only a Labor government that backs working Australians and is supporting more Australians into jobs.
The call to the honourable member for Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture. Peak agricultural bodies are warning that farmers are exposed to massively high capital gains tax under your government's budget. The National Farmers Federation has said, and I quote, "The concern is these changes could force families to delay succession, take on more debt, or even sell parts of the farm just to manage the tax impact." Minister, will you guarantee Australian farming families that they won't be worse off under Labor's budget of broken promises and higher taxes?
Call to the Minister for Agriculture, the Minister for Forestry and the Minister for Fisheries.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. And I thought we dealt with this yesterday, frankly. More scare campaigns from those opposite. Let's be honest about this. Yesterday I quoted the National Farmers Federation, who are pleased that the government has listened to them. And you coming in here talking about things like this is really not very helpful. The budget is very clear. The budget is very clear that the capital gains tax changes start from 1 July 2027 and apply only to gains from that date. Very clear. It's also very clear that, of course, the small business exemptions that are there mean that a lot of farmers right across Australia will be exempt. Right. And indeed, the latest ABS data says that 9 in 10 businesses in agriculture, forestry and fisheries industry will be eligible for these discounts.
Give a call to the honourable member for Reid.
My question is to the Minister for Education. How is the Albanese Labor government investing in education and backing public school teachers?
Give a call to the Minister for Education.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Can I thank my friend, the remarkable member for Reid, for a question, and also a proud product of Sefton High School. Mr Speaker, it's Public Education Day. It's also Thursday, and I know my friends opposite would like a story, so let me give one to you. I was looking at my old school photos over the weekend.
Order.
And as I looked at my Year 7 photo, I saw the tallest boy in the class was a boy named Corey. He was a refugee from Vietnam. And in my Year 12 photo, he's the shortest kid in the class. Now, why is that the case? Tallest in Year 7, shortest in Year 12. Turns out Corey was 5 years older than the rest of us. His mum changed his age on the paperwork because she didn't want him to miss out on an education. She didn't want him to miss out. I don't want anyone to miss out. We don't want anyone held back. We don't want anyone left behind. And it's what we do in education that is so important in that task. And it's public education that does so much of the heavy lifting here, because it educates kids from everywhere, from rich families and poor families and everything in between, in the cities, in the regions, in the bush, all backgrounds, all cultures, all religions. And it's these schools traditionally that have been the most underfunded. That's right. Until this government, until this bloke here, until this Prime Minister, who fixed the funding of our public schools. The biggest investment in public education by an Australian government ever, $20 billion of extra funding to fix the funding of our public schools. And it's not a blank cheque. This is funding that's tied to real and practical reforms like phonics checks and small group tutoring to help kids catch up. It's what mums and dads would expect. It's what kids deserve. It's what Labor governments do. It's what Liberal governments always undo. Labor governments invest in education, and it's Liberals that rip the guts out of education. And can I use this opportunity, Mr Speaker, for a quick shout-out to our teachers? They deserve every cent that they get. They deserve, like every other worker, the tax cuts that are in the budget and in the legislation that the Treasurer introduced today. And early education teachers as well. These are the people who are the real glue, the real magic, the real heroes of this story, who teach our kids the basics and so much more. All of us know a teacher who changed our lives. That's what a good education does. It changes lives. And a great education system changes countries.
The call to the honourable member for Kooyong.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education. Minister, 3 million Australians are in for a horrible shock next week. On the 1st of June, their total HECS debt will increase by over $1 billion. Compulsory repayments that they have made in the last 12 months will not be counted towards their debt before their HECS debts go up yet again. Minister, will you fix HECS by changing the timing of indexation so that repayments can be counted before graduates are hit with indexation?
The call to the Minister for Education.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Thank you for your question about student debt, and I know your passion and your commitment to this area. Can I make a couple of points about student debt and other related reforms that we're making in our universities? The first is that we've cut student debt by 20% for 3 million Australians, and that's the biggest cut to student debt by any Australian government ever, taking a massive weight off the backs of young Australians. The same young Australians, incidentally, that we're helping with the legislation that the Treasurer has introduced to make it easier for young Australians to buy a home. We don't want to have a country where young Australians are forced to rent forever. That's what this legislation is all about. The second point is we're now taking steps to make it easier for young people to get a degree cheaper and faster, particularly young people that have already got a TAFE qualification.
Call to the member for Kooyong on a point of order.
Thank you, Speaker. It's a point of order. Relevance under Standing Order 104. I asked a simple question about indexation of HECS, and I think that the graduates of Australia deserve a simple answer. Thank you, Minister.
The question the Minister was asked, will you fix HECS by changing the timing of indexation so that repayments can be counted before graduates are hit with indexation? So I'm just going to ask the Minister to be directly relevant to that. To the question he was asked. He was asked about the HECS debt issue, so he's entitled to talk about that, and he is 2 minutes. It's only 1 minute into his answer. So listen carefully to make sure he's being directly relevant to the question he was asked.
Just on the point that I was making, let me go back to the point that you've raised. It's all part of the one system that we need reform of, OK? We want to make it easier for young people to get a degree cheaper and faster, particularly if you've been to TAFE, so that you can potentially get a year off your degree and save you potentially $10,000 off the cost of a qualification. Some universities are doing that already. We want more too. I also want to make it easier for young people to get a crack at a university degree, full stop. About 50% of young people today in their 30s have got a uni degree, but not everywhere. In an electorate like yours, it's about 70%. In an electorate like mine, it's about 30%. I want to change that. The legislation I'll introduce in a couple of weeks says that if you're a young person from a poor family or from the bush and you've got what it takes, you'll get a place at university. Now, on the point of indexation, we've already made some important changes to the way HECS is indexed, and that had important benefits for young people right across the country. I know you're also concerned about the job-ready graduate system and how all of that works. I hope you noted that today I announced that Professor Barney Glover has been appointed as the Chief Commissioner of the Tertiary Education Commission, a bloke with a big brain and a big heart. Nobody understands the tertiary education system better than him. He helped to draft the accord. Now he's going to help to build it, including the recommendations that you've pointed to in your questions. And Professor Stephen Duckett, incidentally, has also been appointed to the Tertiary Education Commission and is doing work in this area as well, particularly around the cost of teaching and learning. I recognise that in that area and in so much more there is a lot of unfinished business and there's more work to do.
Give a call to the honourable member for Bendigo.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Defence Industry. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering the defence capability needed to keep Australia safe while creating jobs and building a defence future made in Australia? How does this compare to other approaches?
Call to the Minister for Defence Industry and the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs.
I thank the member for Bendigo for her question and her fierce advocacy for Australia's defence industry. Speaker, delivering the capability our ADF needs is critical to our nation's safety. We're focused on this and at the same time building a defence future made in Australia. And that's why we're overseeing the largest peacetime increase in defence spending in Australia's history. And I'm proud to say to the House that 3/4 of the defence budget is spent in Australia. And as a result, the Australian defence industry is growing. Since we came to government, Australian defence manufacturing output has grown by 35%. and that's leading to more Aussie jobs and more Aussie capability. Last year alone, defence manufacturing employment grew by a massive 11% in this country, and we've got a steady drumbeat of deliverables. Just last month, we announced a $750 million investment to build almost 300 new Bushmaster vehicles in Bendigo, the largest single order for Bushmaster since the production line opened in 1999, supporting 300 direct local jobs for the next 7 years and supporting thousands throughout the supply chain. Speaker, the Bushmaster is one of Australia's great defence industry success stories. World-leading in 9-country service, it uses Illawarra steel, shaped in Broadmeadows and made in Bendigo. And the fact is, Speaker, we're rebuilding Australia's defence manufacturing industry after a decade of neglect. We've opened a Ghost Shark factory in Sydney. We've opened a missile factory in SA last year and opening a second in Hunter next year and a third after that. We've placed the largest ever order of Aussie drones and are investing in Australian-made lasers to defeat drones.
Order.
And, Speaker, on top of that, we're also investing in supporting continuous naval shipbuilding in Australia, including building 26 landing craft in WA. This will create 1,100 direct jobs and more than 2,000 indirect jobs along the process. And then we'll build the upgraded Mogami-class frigates after that. Speaker, all of this comes after a decade of neglect that was recognised by Joe Hockey this week, who said, and I quote, "We got it wrong. We should have stuck with Australian shipbuilding and had continuous shipbuilding. But instead we went elsewhere. Never a truer word has been spoken. And the truth is they had 6 shambolic ministers, 3 hopeless shadow ministers, and their result is they fail up again with the Leader of Opposition promoted into this position. The truth is you can only trust Labor on defence, not those opposite."
Call to the order. Give the call to the honourable member. When the House comes to order, the member will get the call. Call to the honourable member for O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture. Will the Minister guarantee Australian farming families won't be worse off because of Labor's toxic taxes?
The call to the Minister for Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries.
Yes, Mr Speaker, they seem determined to continue this scare campaign on that side of the House. I answered the questions in the past about how the capital gains tax changes will work, and those on the other side need to stick to the facts when it comes to the changes that we are making. We've been very clear that the capital gains tax changes start from 1 July 2027 and apply only to gains from that date. Obviously, there are generous capital gains tax concessions for small businesses, and according to the latest ABS data, it indicates that 9 out of 10 businesses across agriculture, forestry and fisheries will get that concession.
Order. Before I call the member for Cunningham, I'm also pleased to advise in the gallery, as guests of the member for Corangamite, Year 11 students from Christian College. A very warm welcome to the students to question time. Give the call to the honourable member for Cunningham.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government working to reduce family, domestic and sexual violence?
Call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Cunningham. People working in family, domestic and sexual violence in her electorate know that they've got someone who's got their back. She's made a huge contribution on this issue. Mr Speaker, family, domestic and sexual violence is a problem that's been with us for generations, but it's a problem that is changing all the time. We're seeing evolving threats like more tech-facilitated abuse, more victimisation where the perpetrator and the victims are both under 18, more choking in intimate relationships. So as the threat evolves, we need to evolve our response, and that's why the government is consulting right now on our second action plan under the National Plan to End Violence Against Women and Children. But we're not waiting for these consultations to take action. Right now, in this parliament, for example, we've begun the work to prevent perpetrators of family, domestic and sexual violence from receiving superannuation death benefits of their victims, and I want to congratulate the Assistant Treasurer on that work. We've established an inquiry into the relationship between family, domestic and sexual violence and suicide, and I want to thank the member for all the members of that committee for that work. We have already, as a government, changed our social security system to prevent the weaponisation of social security debts against victims of family and domestic violence. And in the most recent budget, we set aside $183 million to update our child support system. We know that the child support system is being weaponised against children and against victims of family and domestic violence. I think probably every member of this place has heard some really disturbing stories. There's almost $2 billion of debt owed to Australia's children because of people avoiding their responsibilities, and almost 100,000 people on the system that have an indicator that shows there's been family or domestic violence in that family. So we need to make sure that children get the support they need and that systems like the child support system are not weaponised against victims of family and domestic violence. Mr Speaker, these efforts right now, the further consultation we're doing on the next action plan, really build on the $4.4 billion that we have invested as a government to eliminate family, domestic and sexual violence in this country. Measures like making the Leaving Violence payment permanent, launching our first ever standalone First Nations plan on family, domestic and sexual violence with a $218 million investment, again in the most recent budget, boosting funding for our 500 Workers program by 70%, boosting funding for 1800 Respect by 40%, and funding practical programs that help men, help adolescents, help children specifically address the risks of violence in our community. Every one of us has a responsibility, every level of government and every one of us as citizens. Thank you.
Is the member seeking indulgence? Resume your seat. Give the call to the member for Ryan.
Thank you, Speaker.
Associated remarks. My apologies. The member for Ryan has.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister allow a conscience vote on a 25% gas export tax?
Order. The Prime Minister has the call. Order. Prime Minister has the call.
I belong to the Australian Labor Party, and what we're doing when it comes to these issues of energy, firstly, is securing Australia's fuel supply, which those opposite the member who asked the question mightn't be conscious of the war in the Middle East and the impact that it's having on fuel supplies right around the world, not the least of which is here, but we certainly are. And it's quite remarkable that today we have more petrol than we had on February 28. We have more diesel than we had on February 28. And indeed, we have more jet fuel than we have on February 28 as well.
Order. The Minister for Social Services.
We have worked with industry, and in spite of the fire at the Geelong refinery, it has exceeded expectations. People might recall that prior to Easter, we had people turning up at petrol stations, filling up jerry cans and putting them in their garage. We had businesses.
The member has asked a very broad question, and I know she's appreciating a yes or no answer, but just like every other member, I can't deliver that for her with the standing orders, but out of courtesy, I'll give her the call.
Point of order on relevance. The question was about tax, not fuel supply.
Well, it was about gas exports. So the Prime Minister needs to make sure he's being directly, and he is being directly relevant regarding the topic he was asked about.
Stated the member, with respect, that most people recognise, who've looked at this issue for more than a nanosecond, recognise that the connection between Australia being a secure supplier of energy in our region is one of the things that has led to us being a secure receiver of energy in our region as well. And that at a time where we have a global crisis as a result of the war in the Middle East, then to just dismiss that and pretend that that is not happening is something that it's on the news every day. It's not a secret war. It's not secret that the Strait of Hormuz is shut, and it's not secret that that is having an impact here. It also is not a secret because we have declared that this is our absolute priority, and quite frankly, the achievements that have been done with the support of industry, through Export Finance Australia, through working with our refineries, through working with our suppliers, has been quite extraordinary. I take the opportunity to thank Singapore, Brunei, Malaysia, South Korea, Malaysia and China for the cooperative way in which we've delivered. I'll tell you what, if someone turns up at a petrol station and there's no fuel, that's when you have a big issue, because it's so important as well for our agricultural sector.
Call to the honourable member for Maribyrnong.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government dealing with the immediate challenges facing Australia while building our resilience for the future? What are the alternate approaches?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Maribyrnong for her question. And one of the issues that we're dealing with, of course, goes to the member for Ryan's last question about the impact of the war in Europe and how we're dealing with that, showing our resilience with our fuel security plan in the budget, making sure that we have a fuel reserve for the government that is government-owned here, making sure that we continue to get those supplies of fuel and fertiliser into the country so that the agriculture sector in particular can continue to plant during what is planting season at this time, so that they can be confident that they'll have the diesel to be able to harvest food for our people and for our exports as well. This is absolutely critical. But, Mr Speaker, when our government came to office 4 years ago, we faced many challenges. We did face a challenge with schools and TAFE, and what we've done there is to fully fund every public school. And on Public Education Day, we are very proud of that. We had a TAFE system that had suffered from a decade of neglect, and what we've done through free TAFE and proper funding is make sure that public TAFE is again at the centre of our vocational education and training system. We have public hospitals that were at breaking point, and in the deal that we delivered with states and territories of $25 billion of additional funding, that will make a substantial difference. But it's not just that, Mr Speaker, because we have responsibility for primary health care and our urgent care clinics, of which, in 2 weeks' time, the 137th urgent care clinic will open in Australia to make an enormous difference. We have increased bulk billing right around the country as well, much faster than was anticipated. $25 scripts for the medicines on the PBS are making an enormous difference. When we came to office, we had a Royal Commission that summed up aged care with one word: neglect. And we had the biggest reforms in 25 years as a result of getting it right. We now have nurses in nursing homes 99% of the time as a result of our reforms. And we're paying aged care workers properly. When we came to office, low wages were a deliberate design feature of those opposite. What we've had is successive increases in the minimum wage, making sure that we deal with those challenges. And, of course, when it comes to housing, when we came to office, we have a system that simply is not working for young people. And we are reforming the system so that young people can have the security of a roof over their head. These are all reforms to deliver real change. Delivering real change is what Labor governments do. And on that note, Mr Speaker, I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.